think we're ready.
Let's do it.
All right. So, welcome, Gregory. It's my turn. I get to interview you this season.
Welcome to your own podcast.
Guess who's back? Uh,
No, I'm very excited to have a conversation. If we listen back to last season, right, I got to put you in the hot seat and grill you
mhm.
a little bit. So, how the tables have turned.
Now the turntables.
Table turning.
Yes. Yeah. Thinking back to season one of last year, um, and just kind of opening up this season because this will be our season opener. Um, First of all, let's do an overview introduction to you, Gregory Perrine, not only as Pholeo's co-founder, but also e-guide and catering sales extraordinaire, the whole shebang. Um, Give me your elevator pitch of today of who you are in a nutshell.
I think the best way to sum it up is taking the opportunities that have presented themselves to me has led me through a life of which I've chosen the thing that is interesting over the thing that I have to do. And whether entrepreneurship is in my DNA or it has been a nature versus nurture point to get me to where I am today, everything that I've done in my life has been a on paper journey that makes absolute no sense. And yet I draw on skills that I've obtained through every transition point every day in current role and probably future role.
Yes.
So I think it is, I've, I would love for me to identify myself as like a Renaissance human, right? Of I am always there to learn. There's always something to learn. I will always be able to go for the challenge, the puzzle, and it's weaving this tapestry of experience together into something that makes sense to make money and live off of, and hopefully help the world for good.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Gregory Perrine, Renaissance man of the 2020s.
Right, I said Renaissance human.
I'm sorry. I did not mean to misgender you. Renaissance human.
Pronouns are he, him, but a Renaissance human.
I like that. That's beautiful. Um, Coming on to season two, everything that you kind of just said, I feel like is where we have ended up on our structure for season two. So, just to give listeners a quick overview for anybody who's new to the podcast, for anyone who is unfamiliar with either Gregory and I, my name is Rocio Aldana. I am Pholeo co-founder and longtime best friend of Gregory Perrine, who we were just introduced to. Most of our listeners will know one of the two of us, but there you have it. In case you don't, welcome. Now, the way Greg just described who he is as a person and how he's kind of woven together all of his experiences into this tapestry of who he is today, and somehow managed to monetize like a good portion of that. We kind of, correct me if I'm wrong, did the same thing with season two of this podcast. Like season one, you went in with a very clear vision of all of these experts in your Rolodex that you wanted to kind of bring attention to, voice trends for the next year. And it provided a really fantastic structure. It allowed us to play around with the fun of it while still having a little bit of a roadmap to play off of. Whereas in season two, I get the sense that we kind of let it happen organically, right? Instead of putting together an idea as we went through the year, kind of saying, well, should we do this for season two? AI slapped us over the head just like it did with everybody else. It was, should we think about AI? Should we pivot completely to that? To come full circle to say, organically, you had six guests right away, already in mind, really like 10. You were able to narrow it down to six. You were able to schedule, record, and get them into our drive, almost all of them within what, a 3 or 4 week time frame. So all of that to say, how would you describe the vibe of season two that we can expect?
Yeah, not to echo what I just said, but I think there's a through line very clear to me. But I'm curious from those who are listening if they draw the same through line. And I think this positions the platform of the journey that we're on this year as well is it's connecting dots. We have tech founders who are bringing their perspective into this season of the podcast. We have event, uh, off-premise caterers, who's who of Chicago who are bringing years of experience into it. We have newly emerging businesses who are focused on kind of the mice market. And we have some larger influencers, so to speak, within the events sector as well. That to me, there's a very through line, right? Like we will talk about AI, but the perspective of AI from all of these vantage points is very different. And how do we explore that? There is technology and what it means today. And by definition, everything is rooted in event logistics. So not one of these episodes is there for just fluff. We do go a layer deeper. We talk about substance, and what should be very interesting for the listeners is to draw the same parallels that I have from hosting this. It is just a cross section of current state going into this new year. We still are cracking the code on AI's use in our day to day in the events industry. There is a huge range of adoption happening in the AI sector. And there's a huge level of expectations put on all of these people across vertical or across roles, yeah, really, that like, I know we need to be using AI, but how? Yeah, mm-hmm. Where are we finding that place in a day to day? How is that impacting the logistics of the events that we're running, from a high volume caterer to a high touch incentives trip to a global strategy for a huge conference? And everyone should hopefully walk away feeling like no one's figured it out yet, right? Yeah. No one has cracked the code.
And anyone who says they have is lying, just flat out.
And we are on this journey together, right? So you don't have to worry about bringing your I don't knows into your next meeting, because guess what? Like, your boss's boss's boss also doesn't know.
Totally. I love that. I'm going to throw out some of Rovo's takeaways. So for our listeners, Rovo is the AI tool that Confluence, Atlassian, right, rolled out that we use internally. So one of my fun AI explorations has been to just activate that agent with all of the stuff that we have, whether it's SOPs, transcripts, etc. So I'm going to read you the bullet points that Rovo's pulled just from the transcripts. I gave no prompts whatsoever. And it said, the summary of this page is multiple different podcast episodes that talks about event planning and how it involves complex logistics, understanding client needs, demographics, and expectations, and how that is crucial for success. Emphasis on AI enhancing efficiency, but human interaction is essential for nuance. And how the industry is adapting to tech workforce changes while balancing efficiency and a personal touch. And then finally, networking and relationship building remain at the center of successful sourcing and execution. So I feel like that nailed most of what you said. Do you agree?
Yeah, and typical for an AI conversation with me, that last touch point of like, absolutely right. Yep, the thing that I couldn't see clearly because I've made it through the 3 bullet points that my mind is able to grasp, but AI was able to make it to that number 4 of like, it is about connection. And so much of our industry is about connection. And this podcast gives us the ability to connect with our users, with our industry, with our connections or network on another level. And we get to share that experience with everyone else. So thank you, Rovo AI, for getting a number 4 bullet point that I wasn't able to obtain.
Doing a great job. Great job. But again, reminder, you are the content as well. So it exists because you made it so first.
Yes. Which, again, we could talk about AI for an hour plus, which I try not to hone in on all of these episodes with just AI. I weave it in and out of how that impacts. But you're absolutely right, is that it is a tool in our tool belt in current state, not the decision maker for us.
Oh, you just made me think about like 5 or realistically probably 2 years from now when we go back and listen to all of the content that came out of 2025.
Yep.
It makes me think of what was the chat bot that we used to talk to on AOL Instant Messenger? Wasn't it
Uh,
literally like chat buddy?
Simple 1 2 3 or something like that. Yep,
Mm-hmm.
like there was a name, your aim buddy, who just had programmed responses for you.
Yes. Yeah. Like that in 2 years, that's what this will feel like. Remember when? Uh,
Yeah. And even shout out to Lenny's podcast. It is the not specific to the events industry, but it is one of my tried and true. Preface everyone that there are longer episodes, so do it on a walk or a drive or a long commute or a trip. But each episode, even reflecting back 6 months ago from the uh, reference point of AI to today, all of the talk tracks are already starting to evolve. So
mm,
you're absolutely right. Like we are going to go into thinking back on this of like, remember when?
yes. Lovely. Speaking of remember when, uh, because like you said, we could talk about AI for episodes and episodes. We're going to go back to a time long before AI, back to the topic at hand, which is Gregory Perrine, your origin story, your founder story as CEO of eGuide and of Pholeo. Um, I'm going to make a statement, and you can agree or disagree, but I know that you started eGuide from the core of like wanting to help people, wanting to do something that actually can have a tangible influence. And I always think about the story of, was it your grandfather's website,
Yep.
right, where it started? I'll let you tell the story. Um, but just tying a through line for our listeners, because of that, I kind of have always considered eGuide like a tech incubator for Pholeo. So I want to get your reaction to that because I've thrown that out there every once in a while, and I don't think you've ever really reacted to that as a concept, as eGuide as a tech incubator.
Yeah. To give you the reaction that you're looking for, I think um, it it is by definition a technology guide, right? So it has always been built into the title for me.
Mhm.
But it's the work that we were doing with all of our partners on eGuide is to help them kind of crack the code on where technology fits into your current landscape, specifically for small businesses and for emerging nonprofits. So the exception to the rule is kind of the Folio piece of that, of like eGuide historically has not worked with many startups who are true startups, right? Of which pacing is a much bigger deal than a small business. The tractor repair shop down the road or the lawnmower repair shop down the road is not operating to scale into a bunch of different franchisees in 5 years, right?
Sure.
This is there to ensure that the owners have livelihood, that systems are working, that they're able to make a profit or at least paint a picture of profitability. So it is a different lens that work was done under. To back it up for listeners, like eGuide came out of you're exactly right. Wanting to help people with technology, but the funny story and the not so funny story. There's two aspects of this: is teaching grandma how to text, right? And then there is the technology can save lives piece of it as well. So the not so funny piece of eGuide's origin is losing my grandfather to a stroke in the shower, of which, like, if he had known that he could have called out potentially to his smart device that was, within arm's length or within earshot to call 911, that could have been a life-saving moment of time in technology. On the funny side is like with technology in hand, there's still a lot of change management that goes into the retraining for someone to be able to send a daily text message who doesn't understand what a text message is to begin
Mhm.
with, right? And so eGuide 1.0 is helping baby boomers and beyond with their smart devices. And that was enough for me to write a business plan to say, like, if I get 40 boomers and beyond, for me to have one-on-one sessions with them to train them how to use their iPhones better, there's a business here, right?
Mm-hmm.
That I could live off of. And that was enough. And then falling out of the events industry into this business plan quickly pivoted into everyone from the events industry that I knew who were operating their small businesses, from wedding planners to photographers to venues to caterers, reaching out and saying, I didn't know you did technology. Can you help me with my website? Can you help me with my CRM? Can you help me with this platform? And for some reason, I think back to high school, of which, again, back to my woven tapestry, is instead of a boring elective, I chose web design, which happened to be a college course being taught at high school level. And we literally learned how to code an entire website. We learned how to use Photoshop. And this was all as a high school junior, going into our senior year.
Mm-hmm.
So the coding piece of it, the technologist piece of it, has always been a through line. And instead of choosing to go to school for graphic design, which was more of a career path, I chose music. And the
Mm-hmm.
music path is a bunch of theory, harmony, analysis, mathematics, music history, all of the hard stuff, that unlocks my left brain to talk to my right brain of my mind. And out of this, it has always been this journey of connecting the dots, and technology has been a through line throughout all of that. So the way I got through music history second semester was I literally learned how to type fast enough to dictate what the professor was saying, to take notes, so that I could just kind of reread those word for word and pick out. And it was me typing at the speed of how I think, and using my MacBook in classroom, which back when we were in college was still like not everyone was carrying around their laptops every day.
Yeah.
But
Not to age us, but yes,
yep,
we were in college before the smartphone.
yeah, yep. 2006 was sophomore year of college for us, and we navigated the city of Chicago without a smartphone for a good year plus before Maps became an app that we
You know,
could
just
rely
hop on the L and get off at a random stop. We survived.
on. So with that, like, it is, technology has always been underneath what I'm doing, and there's been an unlock for as long now as I can remember, going back to high school, going back to tinkering around with computer games, of platforms have made sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
And not knowing when I started eGuide, but really kind of reflecting back on having this business for almost 10 years now, it is the ability to break parallels down for those small businesses and nonprofits that we still work with to this day in a way that creates positive net change in day-to-day operations. And if you parallel that to Pholeo, that's exactly what we are setting out to do. Is we aren't reinventing the wheel. We are identifying the inefficiencies in the wheel and putting them together with a framework that the platform is supporting you with.
Mm-hmm.
We are putting together checks and balances that you don't get when you homegrown your own operating system. And we are putting together a support team that is actually there for you so that you don't feel like you are left to your own devices up until 2 a.m. crying over your specs because it needs to get done and you're the only one that can do it, you know?
Yeah.
And thinking about the ignition point for Pholeo, it's exactly the same kind of why behind eGuide when I started it. Is there are people out here who are grinding to the bone, you know, literally spending hours and hours and hours poring over these large event logistics, and there has to be a better way. And
Mm-hmm.
we should be able to help these wonderful planners out in bringing about the hard work that they do with at least some sort of peace of mind and community around that to do it in a better way.
Yes. So I asked you if you identify with eGuide as a tech incubator, and your answer is your entire existence is kind of a tech incubator. From the initial curiosity point back in 2004 or 3 or whenever that was, to living that through the core of your life in everything that you do. It's not that you are intentionally looking to create these spaces in the way that traditional tech incubators do, right? If we think of Silicon Valley or 1871 or any of the places around town that we would call a tech incubator, it's like they incubate on purpose. It's almost like they're trying to create false diamonds. Whereas when you have that natural curiosity, like you do, and you have had your entire life, diamonds just kind of happen. Not to toot your horn for you, but like there is something to be said about not shying away from what creativity brings. Not to say you haven't prioritized profit, because obviously you've been able to make a really great living. Like you've been profitable in everything that you've done, but you've also not been greedy. You have, as your COO, I have actively watched you put people over profit time and time again, and yet that through line still ensures success, right? So what I heard is you as a person are really the incubator, the true entrepreneur, not necessarily eGuide was an incubator for Pholeo.
I think the ethos for sure is there. And I think the additive to that statement is I could not do this alone, right? I couldn't do eGuide alone and I couldn't do Pholeo alone. And it's finding those like talents and the people who are willing enough and daring enough. Um, we all have to be a little bit have a few screws loose to operate in the events industry.
Mhm.
And hopefully the wellness piece of that gets better over time and there's more space to focus on you with the platform that we're bringing to market. But even so, like you can't prevent event fires from happening and the all hands on deck, but it is just as much of the community. Back to that fourth bullet point of Rovo that was isolated is like, it's the same for the companies and businesses that we're building as well. Like those connection points, both internally and externally, are just as important as the products and the efficiencies and the incubator, type crucible we're going through.
Yeah, love that. The crucible. Um, I would love for you to nerd out just a little bit on the music theory and being a music major and
Mhm.
how that impacted you and how that really like transformed your thought process on who you are as an intellectual, how you looked at problem solving. Because I think we've talked about this a good amount as a group internally, with our own team. But I think it would be really fun for some of our listeners to hear that nerd out just a little bit in case it
Sure.
matches someone else's spicy.
Yeah, I think there's two sides to that coin. I needed the creative outlet. So, along with the music major, I was a fiction writing minor
Mhm.
because I don't think I would have been able to sustain just how intense the music major was without the creative outlet. Big shout out to Columbia College Chicago. And we chose, I say we because Rocio and I both went there. We chose Columbia because we knew it was going to be the environment we wanted to be in more so than the degree we wanted to walk away with and the profession that I knew was going to choose me no matter what I chose was going to be based on the environment. And I am so happy that we landed in Columbia College in those core years of 2005 to 2009,
Sure.
because to me, that was peak Columbia kind of coming into the advent of Facebook. What college experience in Chicago looked like quickly changed as I heard after we graduated and after the self loop started to change. So, with music being the core of what every day was, we are talking about intensive reprogramming of how my mind worked. I chose music because I like to sing. And I got to college, and introduction to music theory was learning a foreign language, mathematics, and sound recognition, where sight singing, musicianship, and ear training was a 4-year class run. So you would go through levels 1 through 4. You would go through music theory, harmony, and analysis levels 1 through 4, music history 1 and 2, and that was on top of all of what should be your fun classes.
Mm-hmm.
But we fell into a jazz concentration in which all of those jazz modalities and harmony modalities became just as much of a focus. So it was like, how far can we take this hard path, which is also kind of a through line of my life. You'd like to call out for me a few times that I like to do everything on hard mode, and it's true. But it was I'm gonna go full in, and so I was cracking jazz, classical music, some musical influence, but not a ton. And it was my senior year history paper had to be, music theory paper was an analysis of the harmonic movement of a Beatles song, which on surface sounds somewhat enjoyable.
So much fun.
But if you break down a Beatles song and just the crazy musicianship and composition structure behind some of those well-known Beatles songs, like it goes so deep. And because I wasn't a pianist, I was a vocalist, the way that I was able to get through it was I translated everything that I was trying to communicate to solfege, which is the do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, dos. But I walked away from my college degree knowing exactly what those solfege names meant in terms of the overall composition structure of where it fit into the harmonics. And I turned in that paper, and my music theory teacher came back to me and was like, I've never had someone do what you did to make the right analysis, the right structure from a vocalist perspective. And he's like, because you were able to parallel this, and this is your concentration, this is exactly how you should be thinking about this, because you aren't the orchestra, you are the vocalist, and you're following these harmonic lines through this complex harmonic structure based on how you can interpret it in your brain. And that's exactly what you should be doing. So between that unlock paired with this super creative outlet that I found in fiction writing, which it does not exist anymore, but Columbia College had a fiction writing program that you could get a master's in as well, that had an entire workshop that was called Take a Place. And it was the story workshop method. And it was an entire visualization brainstorming session in which you would develop this entire, fake story world, fictitious world in your mind. And you would start right in the action. And between the music analysis piece of it, which was so critical and so left brain, and this, I'm going to blow up into this magical, envisioned world of pure fantasy. Both ends of my mind just kind of did this expansion of what ultimately unlocked this like thirst to learn more, right? To never stop learning. And that became very apparent as soon as I stumbled into off-premise catering. That's the journey.
I was gonna make the jump into our D&D campaign that we started recently. Because to me, it's the exact same thing. It's from now jumping ahead to a Pholeo perspective, you are wearing the hat of product, which for our non-tech users, I had to learn this as well. When you're developing a software, you have the people who actually do the nuts and bolts behind the scenes to make it as basic as possible, right? The people who are doing the coding. And then you have the product team who knows enough to be dangerous, hopefully, if you have your team set up the right way, to paint the picture, to really like architect the story, right? So to parallel that to D&D, like your dungeon master needs to be able to architect the story while also totally understanding the nuances of what goes into it. So all of that to say, that was one of kind of my favorite fun things to come out of this past year. And I want to ask you, coming full circle, what are some core memories from 2025, positive or negative, whatever kind of comes to mind for you?
Yeah, I think I brought it up in Kay's kind of last 90-day check-in, actually, of just like what an unlock D&D has been to our team.
Mm,
And it is storytelling. It is a creative outlet. It's envisioning a world that doesn't exist and being able to share that vision with the people around your table. And to echo your sentiment, like that's exactly what we are doing with a small but mighty startup a lot of the times. Is I can see it, you see it differently. How do we make these stories and narratives converge together to turn it into the next user story, the next feature, the next thing that's going to unlock uh, a huge time saver for our planners? And that creative outlet, even though our campaign at Pholeo is not related to the product at all, although we did, that was one of my fond memories as well, is like when we introduced D&D to the team at our mid-year retreat last year, it
the rapid
was
fire
that
one.
we were all in event superheroes planning or saving an event that had these pop-up things that were kind of adjacent to but not completely unrealistic, that could happen, that the keynote boss was there to turn down or to turn off the power or something, like that.
I will
um,
definitely put some like quotes and dramatic music in because it's chef's kiss.
but even to get that uh, kind of creativity sparked in our entire team has only paid forward from there. For us to come at it in the most recent context of now, when we go into workshopping a new concept or idea, we can use ChatGPT to do a meeting recap as if it were a recap of a campaign from D&D, and it goes into full storytelling mode, and it gives such color and context. And I think it was Alicia that said, like, okay, I will melt for any sort of D&D recap of any meeting, like sign me up, sign, sealed, delivered. And I think that culture aspect of, we are event professionals, we can pretty up and go out with the best of them, right? But underneath of it, there is a nerdy element to us all, in which like the D&D piece of it unlocks something super special, and we get to apply that into our product on a regular basis. So I think that's kind of a multiple highlights throughout last year. And I think the discovery process, kind of bringing it back to a critical eye, I just kind of, it's hard for me not to laugh, thinking that we could have launched this product with just yeah, people are just going to come to the website and they're going to sign up and they're going to figure it out because it's intuitive. And obviously, like, we built it for them to click on a few things and it's going to make sense.
Because that's how people work, right? They just log in and they click around and they're not scared to break things.
To now get to a level where we are like, okay, let's really workshop this specific onboarding module so that it is breaking things down in a way that planners are going to understand through and through. And we're not surprised anymore when it's the circle goes in the square hole. That's not how we designed it, but we're getting better and better at putting the right lens onto the approach to make sure that when it does go awry, the support is right there to make sure someone is there to help you pick up the pieces, or write your course back into where you should be. So yeah, just thinking through even the minor pivots. I wouldn't say we've had a true pivot. We didn't move from events industry to aeronautics because the platform works for a completely different vertical. Our pivots have been more enhancements and learnings that have shaped the next move in the business. And much like the D&D campaigns, it's all this journey of being able to navigate what comes next, and try to align to make the thing work.
Yes. When you said circle in a square hole. It made me think of that one TikTok audio of the woman who's watching someone put, the shapes in the box, and she's like, "Oh, that's a circle." They put it in the square. She's like, "Oh, that's no. Oh, wait, that's a triangle." And they put it in the wrong hole again. I feel like that's us, just like trying to paint the little box as much as possible and be like, "Look, it's so obvious. Circle goes in circle." And then people do what they're going to do, and we just have to roll with it and say like, okay, it still fits. It does
Yep.
technically, it still fits. So it's like so nails on a chalkboard on the one hand, and then on the other side, like sometimes it's absolutely brilliant because sometimes I feel
Yeah.
like we get this unlock of, oh, yeah, that's actually what I've been trying to say, and until you put that star shape into a circle, I didn't know that that's what I was looking for.
Yep. And back to just kind of the e-guide influence of this, of like, because in my mind I can hold a Salesforce picture of which like the success of a Salesforce deployment really based on how much or how little you show the users using the thing that they need to do to operate their role within the broader
Mm,
schema, right?
yeah, yeah.
Um, and that is what we are navigating. Sometimes good, sometimes learning. Of being able to toggle on the right placement of the right thing for the user to do what the intended use was. And then you will always have these edge cases of being able to say, yep, you can do it that way, but do we want you to do it that way? And
Hmm.
if we don't want you to do it that way, are we making a product decision to not allow you to do said thing that way in the future? And it is this, ball of yarn of just because we can doesn't mean we should, and
Hmm.
just because this planner does it this way doesn't mean that it's universally accepted that way. Where is the laws of averages in here? How much functionality is too much functionality? And that's what I'm most excited about, kind of going into this year, is how we continue to take user feedback and lived experience and the events that we're planning with Pholeo and continuing to iterate on the platform. Even thinking last year about what Pholeo was compared to what it is today, like we've
Yes.
already evolved so much as a platform.
Yeah, yeah. So anchor us in that. Like go pre-folio to your beta, like how you decided that oh, this is something that I could build, not just a couple of tools that I've cobbled together. Because I think there was a moment in time where collectively we like didn't want to give our secrets away, right? It was like, well, if we tell everyone that it was Zapier and Looker Studio and, Google Sheets and blah, 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 like really anybody could do that. Let's be real. No one's doing that. Even if you give them the exact step-by-step instructions on how to do it, everybody goes to step two and they're like, are you kidding? I'm done. And there's 12 more steps to go through. So anchor us on, you know, how you came to these are the tools that are essential for managing this $18 million food and beverage budget to I'm going to build it myself to the leap of what it is today against what it was even a year and a half ago.
Yeah. I think it's important to start from like the point of entry and the origin of that, of uh, the intense spreadsheets that were used to manage conference logistics for an event of, I would say it starts getting really bad at like 5,000 and over,
Yeah.
right? Where you end up having to like search for the tab you're looking for versus like scrolling for the tab because it's, two clicks of a mouse to find the tab versus like I'm color coding my tabs at the bottom to identify which type of program element it goes to. And for every planner listening, like colors don't translate to reports and dashboards very well.
Hmm.
You can color code all you want, and unless that filter is based on the entire column's color, there's not much sorting and filtering, and definitely not much reporting you can do based on how you are color coding your spreadsheets.
Hmm.
And if you're color coding your tabs, you've gone too far. But this was the environment that was normal practice.
Yeah.
There were, templates and hours of consulting time spent on developing this is the way we want to manage food and beverage logistics specifically, but space allocation and room designation and all of your logistics. Like a space allocation grid is still to this day a huge uh, unorganized set of data that seems organized on the surface until you dig into, wait a minute, I have to scroll right for 3 miles to find that one cell that I was looking for. Anytime you're going into a data set that starts the alphabet over, it should be a red flag that you're probably not doing it the most efficient way possible, right?
Yeah.
um, so coming from that and being like, I can create efficiency for the piece that I'm a part of, which at that point was the on-site time, right? So I start using Trello and I start creating my own efficiencies on site. And because people are looking over my shoulder, and because my phone is out 100% of the time, because I'm operating everything without a binder and without a printed piece of paper, the ears start to perk up and the eyes start to watch what I'm doing. And then the natural evolution of those conversations of how can we use that piece of it for our entire team on site becomes kind of baby Pholeo, right? We're just focused on the on-site piece of it. I don't know enough at this point in history to speak to the full pre-planning cycle.
Mm-hmm.
And I was able to show value for those small business owners really in creating efficiencies in how they were managing their contracts and their teams on site. Flash forward to the time that I said yes, right? I knew going into it that this was going to be the unlock that put the entire puzzle together in my head. And so when I said yes to our dear friend Mel, to step into one of these food and beverage lead roles, I was like, I have to do it my way. And
Mm-hmm.
my way was one data set, as few rows as possible, but no tabs, right? Just a congruent set of data that I could link to a visualization tool. So because Looker Studio is free, because I was building my specs in Google Sheets, I connected the dots, I made that integration, and I put together those visualizations to say, this is what a true event dashboard should look like. And the term dashboarding is very broadly used for event planners. It seems that sometimes a dashboard means a truncated table, and sometimes a dashboard means charts and graphs, right? So when I think of a dashboard, I want charts and graphs that yield tables, right? I want to be able to click into something that then takes me to that cross section of my event specs. And so I was able to build that. And then we used Trello, and that whole process at that time had been pretty well automated. So it was these connections of 3 platforms that eventually said, after talking with Connie, a great mentor, shout out to Connie, who is just a brilliant mind, comes from the consulting world, super effective in nonprofits. She's like, I think you have a business idea here. And then followed it up with, I think you have a platform idea here. And I don't consider myself a technical founder. However, I do consider myself a technologist. So enough to be dangerous. And I'm super grateful that we built our MVP in a pre-AI, pre-vibe code, even though it was just over 2 years ago, right? It wasn't that long ago.
Yep.
Vibe coding was not a term in 2023 going into 2024.
I mean, technically, I would say what you were doing was vibe coding, right? Because you were
your audio cut out.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Nope.
Oh man, it says I'm still sending audio. My little microphone guy is going.
Oh, is your microphone red? Did you just mute your
Nope,
microphone?
it's green. I keep looking, it's green. I can see it in the reflection. I'm green. My audio's green.
Test. Speaker, microphone, speaker. Try now.
Can you hear me?
Oh, I got you.
What happened?
I have no idea.
Okay. Well, I'm just double checking mine now. I've got my sound coming out of the MacBook. I've got my Shure 7 as the microphone. All my little levels are going. So I should be good.
Cool.
Okay. I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, I was calling you a vibe coder, like pre-vibe coding, because you were curious enough to get into Bubble. And you were the
Yep.
one that said to me, I can do it without having to be a complex coder.
Yeah. And so Bubble for us as a platform has really been that next layer of unlock for me to be able to connect the dots of product to dev. Um, and same thing to your point of a planner can do a complex amount of things, but when they hit a roadblock at step 1.5, like what is the patience and the determination to continue forward?
Mhm.
And Bubble is very much that, right? Even if the logic makes sense to you, there is a lot of tinkering in there to be able to fully crack the code on how it's built and how it's intended to be used. Because everything is based on workflow triggers, right? So it is when you click a button, this happens, and this might send off another workflow over here, and you are mapping out what would be code, right? Written to call another JavaScript prompt or whatever have you, but you're able to just map it out step by step within Bubble that gives me the ability to see it in a visual, straightforward way that works with my mind. And then luckily, when Michael came on board, our developer, he was able to use his full stack knowledge and quickly kind of cracked the code on Bubble. So I would say like for developers who are full stack and able to code, like Bubble is still able to be used. But even with what we are doing now with some of the more complex API code calls and backend workflows that are calling an API and doing a lot of database manipulation, there can quickly become a level of complexity that is it's not every junior coder can just pick up Bubble and create Pholeo.
Mhm.
We are now beyond the entry level into the deeper roots of Bubble as well, which has been great to see. But it to get that MVP out there, it was me designing and building and figuring it out versus me prompting and
Mhm.
tinkering with something that the interface is what I want it to be, but I have no understanding of the layers beneath it that run the operations. So very grateful that like we started when we did, and we are entering the AI game with a different perspective than this is our origin story, which I think is super important.
Love that. I think we've gotten sufficiently technical. Um, we
Hopefully
may
not
have,
too.
if we haven't lost you yet, if you're still with us, uh, you could be like me. You could follow. I promise you could get to the point where you could follow everything that Greg said and still not be able to vibe code. Um, she says after vibe coding. So we've got about 10 minutes left, and the only thing we haven't really touched on for you as my guest today is a little bit of personal. So um, I think it's very well known and documented in LinkedIn how much of a family man you are. Um, I love your children. I don't think I've ever met anyone who hasn't absolutely adored your children. You have a wonderfully supportive husband at home. Is there anything else you would like to share about yourself as a person outside of the entrepreneur and, the creative mind that you are?
Yeah, I would love to take this into a call to action because like my network isn't full of uh, other LGBT founders with children.
Mm,
And my hesitation there was like, it doesn't have to just be gay men, founders. Like,
sure.
if you are in an LGBT relationship in parenting and in running your own business or entrepreneurship, like, I want to talk to you, you
Hmm.
know? Um, and I think it's now going a layer deeper into like, there is not a prescribed path for a gay dad with two children, right? Uh, I could find one book and it was not very enjoyable to read. I won't name it, but like I
Yeah.
found one book about gay parenting, and it was written so like superficially, and I
Mm,
was like, that's not my lived experience. That's not what day to day is going to look like. And now, after becoming a parent, like that story is not accurate to me. But I know I'm not alone in this journey. I just would love to develop that network of here is someone who is juggling being a significant other to someone of the same sex or the LGBT community, of which like there aren't the social norms and archetypes forced upon you,
yeah.
whether good, bad, or indifferent. You are trying to navigate being a parent, coming up against these unknowns all of the time of how do we navigate schools? What about this incident? My kid came home talking about this today. Here's what happened. And trying to build and run a business on top of that, of which, like, even taking the LGBTQ entrepreneur circle, it's not that large,
True.
right?
Absolutely.
There, there, there are plenty there's plenty of content. I will say it's, a growing community, but there's plenty of content for women run organizations in an entrepreneurial and startup realm. There's plenty of content in a growing base for minority run. I have not stumbled upon as wide a net for the LGBT community in a startup space, let alone a startup space in which you are a parent and an entrepreneur, right?
Sure.
So there's parallels to be had, and there's a lot of like parallel content that I can get the truth nuggets that I'm looking for out there with startup stories and content. And there's parallels between minority and women run of just not being seen, being able to find yourself and being heard. And it's not the same, it's slightly different in what that looks like. But I would love to go into this year kind of developing that LGBTQ community, bringing you along with me into that journey as well. I, but if I can find, yeah, more parents in that market, it would be great.
Sure. No, I love that. I mean, what you're really talking about is intersectionality, and that like sounds like such a taboo word, especially coming from a feminist. But the you know, I could see someone bristle at like, well, why does it have to be a gay dad? And why are other dads not enough of a community? Why are single moms not enough of a community? And like I want to be very clear that that's not what you are saying at all. It's very much a yes and. It is all of these communities that you've been exposed to have their own nuance and, pros and cons and rigor and struggle. And there's just something to speaking to someone who is experiencing as like of a path as you that just can't be matched. And I will parallel that with my experience at IBTM a couple weeks ago of I I never realized what it would feel like to be normal.
Mm,
And when I say that, I don't think I'm abnormal. I think I'm very normal. I'm very white passing, all of the things. But there's a difference between going through my whole day and introducing myself to hundreds of new people and saying, "Yeah, it's Rocio, Rocio. Yeah, my dad's from Mexico. Yeah, my beautiful, beautiful. Love to tell my story." But man, did it hit different to not have that question come up
yeah.
even once, to just walk up to a booth and they read my name perfectly and say like, nice to meet you. And we just get into it. I didn't know what that felt like. And so I would imagine it would be similar to say, it's one thing to swap stories on parenting, but to swap stories on parenting and business ownership with someone who is going through it as closely as you are would be just different and wonderful.
Yeah, and I think you hit it on the head there of like it is a parallel experience, but not a lived experience, right? It
Yeah.
is I am able to find the parallels and the through lines all day long,
Mhm.
but to sit down with someone to say like this is how I navigated it when I was in that situation is a completely different level of understanding. It is the empathy versus the sympathy, right?
Mhm.
It is the lived experience versus the objective experience or the parallel experience. And again, to echo your point of like, it's not about uh, the the look and the feel of it, right? It is about the lived experience. Like I'm I'm doing just fine. You know, I'm a white man in 2026. You know, like I'm doing just fine. It's not a cry for help. It would be nice to
Yeah,
have this community, and I'm sure it exists out there. Uh,
absolutely.
and to some of the other, you can't uh, pose as a white man, you know, Rocio, and nor can a person of color pose as a white man. I get the luxury in my lived experience to, if I want to bro up a little bit and not come out with, uh, I am a gay dad and just lead with the I'm a father of two children. I can be pretty heteronormative passing if I want to be.
Sure.
But I think as an entrepreneur, it's a piece of that story as well of like, I am choosing not to be, you know, I want the community and the storyline to be this path that is authentic to me
Yeah.
and my family and my story. And that I can't be alone in that journey. There
Yeah.
has to be some other people out there.
Mm. And authenticity is a big piece of it. Like that is something that is so core to you and who you are, to the double-edged sword of it, right? Like you do not sacrifice authenticity. And a lot of people from the outside go, must be nice. But there is the reality of like, yeah, it's nice. And like, it does take a lot to consistently show up as yourself. And I think that that's a very admirable quality. And I think it needs to be stated.
Thank you.
Of course.
And back to the community piece of that, of I think when you are surrounded by people who allow you to be your authentic self, it's a
Yes.
lot easier. And it is a joy and a pleasure to have your best friend also be your co-founder and your godmother and that I walk with my authenticity a little bit more apparent because I know that I have support around me.
Sure. Thank you. All right. We could talk forever. Let's tie it back. Kind of some final takeaways from this episode. What did we call you at the beginning? You're the 2025 Renaissance man,
Human.
human. Oh my gosh. Okay, I gotta go back to renew my feminism minor from Columbia. Sorry, everybody. Renaissance person. Season two dropping this uh, year, I guess. Um,
Yep.
Any any buttons you want to put on this? Any key takeaways? Anything we should be looking for in 2026 from either the podcast or Folio?
Yeah, I want to pose this question back to you of I've identified it, the episodes and the episode arc and a little bit of that. Like, what are you most excited about?
Mm, I'm excited about having a little bit more creative freedom from the onset, just because last year when we were doing this, I kind of fell into the producer role. It was like we wanted to try it. We knew we wanted to try it, and so many curveballs got thrown at us between December of 24 and pretty much, May of 25 that like I really only got to get the editing out and get content out. Whereas now we have enough episodes in the bank that I have the luxury of being able to look at everything, all of our content, and paint through lines before we go into our bonus episodes, before we start to think about like who else would be fun to just have on the show, um, and decide if we want to actually tie it in, if we want to just be completely silly and ridiculous. I am cautiously optimistic for like the creative outlet that this should be giving both of us in a really fun way.
Awesome. I love that. I will echo the purpose of this podcast has always been about the experience sharing and the storytelling and the being able to give that cross section of the industry with focus on event logistics, which is this area that to me is so important and so overlooked because it's not as shiny as event strategy and event activation and sponsorship and keynote speakers so I think we're doing our job by putting this spotlight in the right area and continuing to encourage the industry to take a look at the people who are planning your food and beverage and your meeting room setups and your power and your AV in a slightly different perspective than what you may have done in years past.
Fun. I love it.
Awesome.
All right. Well, it was a pleasure. Thank you for letting me sit in the interviewer role for a change. It's been super fun.
Same here. It's nice to be grilled with questions instead of being the griller.
Yes. Yeah. So.
And the whole light and perspective has changed. I think to end this episode, I want to also lean into more just sass in class. You know, I want us to be our authentic, silly selves as we go into this year ahead and bring that into the platform and give those surprise and delight moments. And I think all of the writings on the wall that we will be doing just that.
Absolutely. More to come. I'm very excited.
Listen in.
Whether it's ASMR, silly songs, or Dungeons and Dragons. We're gonna close the honeymoon. Close system. It? Is that what we do?
I think seal. You seal the honeymoon.
We seal. We're gonna seal the honeymoon. We're gonna come up with golden. It's
gonna go gold. All right.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.